Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the Portal series. If you didn't know that originally Portal 2 was supposed to be a prequel rather than a sequel, then this show is for you. So Portal, a game developed by Valve and released in 2007 in something called the Orange Box, and originally it was just supposed to be an add-on to the Orange Box, like it wasn't supposed to be the star of the pack or whatever, but it ended up being the main reason why people got the Orange Box. Now Portal is actually the spiritual successor to a game called Narbacular Drop, and in this game you could shoot portals, but you couldn't jump, and there was a whole other level of puzzle mechanics that didn't really make it over to Portal. Now, Valve's president actually saw a presentation of Narbacular Drop, and he loved the idea of the game so much that he offered the whole team that worked on the game jobs at Valve. Portal took a little bit under 3 years to make, and it only ever had 10 people working on it at any given time, so considering the success of the game, that is very impressive. So Portal is actually set in the Half-Life universe, and most people know that, but what a lot of people don't know, that this is actually due to budget constraints rather than story. Basically, the people that were working on Portal couldn't really afford to get people in to work on art for the game, so rather than setting it in its own universe, they set it in the Half-Life universe so they could reuse quite a bit of old art, and they made sure the story didn't contradict Half-Life's. Now, I would love to get more in detail with the development of Portal and Portal 2, but we're going to really look at that in part 2 of this video series. Portal 2 was released in 2011, and that's all you really need to take note of at this point in time.
It's super effective!
Now, before we even get into the story of Portal 1, you need to learn the very interesting prehistory of Aperture Science. Now, Aperture was a company founded in 1943 by a man named Cave Johnston, and it was originally called Aperture Fixtures, and they made shower curtains. Aperture Fixtures was really successful. They created shower curtains for all parts of the US military other than the Navy. Next, in 1947, Aperture Fixtures became Aperture Science Innovators. Originally, this was done just to make the shower curtains sound more hygienic, but in turn they actually did begin to look at actual science. Cave bought out this giant salt mine, which was in Michigan, and this is where he built the Aperture Enrichment Center. And we know this wasn't the only enrichment center, there was at least one other in Ohio. So, during the early days of testing, there were war heroes, Olympians, astronauts, and the peak of society were chose to be tested on. And this lasted for a while. And we all know about portal testing, but this wasn't the only thing that you have to take note of. There were some other things, such as replacing blood with gasoline, giving humans mantis DNA, and reducing the amount of water inside the human body, and obviously all of those experiments failed. There were some very successful tests though, such as the gels that appeared in Portal 2. So early testing of the portal gun began, and by the 1970s, the company began to fail financially, and eventually they resulted into dumping the whole war heroes and Olympians thing and taking off homeless people off the street and paying them $60 for their time. Then, by the 1980s, the company could no longer afford to pay homeless people, so they made testing mandatory for all employees. It's also around this time that Aperture Science Innovators became Aperture Laboratories. During his final days, Cave bought a whole bunch of moon rocks and created the conversion gel, and it was an amazing portal conductor, but the moon rocks were toxic and Cave began to die. After this, Cave became strange. You see, his illness was affecting his mind, and also he was really bitter about Black Mesa's success. To try and counter death, Cave ordered his staff to create a computer that his brain could be downloaded to, but he did predict that he'd probably die before this was a success, so he ordered his staff to download his assistant's brain, Carolyn, onto the computer instead. Cave also said that should Carolyn reject becoming part of the computer, that his staff were to force her to do this. After this, Cave just dies. I think this was actually a recording from one of his final days. So Carolyn became GLaDOS, and every time she was booted up, she'd try and kill people, but in 1988, they thought they had finally succeeded in having a very, very peaceful GLaDOS. They were wrong. During the company's first Bring Your Daughter to Work day, GLaDOS released neurotoxin around the whole facility, and only one scientist that we know of survived, and his name was Doug Ratman. Doug instantly comes up with a way to counter GLaDOS, and he puts Shell at the top of the test subject list so that GLaDOS would test her first. Portal 1 starts with Shell waking up in a relaxation vault. Now, a relaxation vault is essentially an area that test subjects are held after they're deployed from the relaxation center. The relaxation center is essentially a hibernation area that stops test subjects from aging. Shell is told to go through a portal by GLaDOS, and she very quickly obtains the portal gun. She goes through the tests, and as she goes through the tests, 1, she notes that there are no other humans, and 2, she finds all these dens that have all these crazy scribblings and pictures of people with companion cubes over their faces. The tests get harder and harder, and eventually GLaDOS tries to kill Shell by lowering her into the incinerator, but fortunately our hero is smart and uses the portal gun to escape into the inner maintenance rooms of the facility. So Shell is making her escape, and GLaDOS tries to trick Shell out of doing this with promises of cake and a party, and obviously that doesn't work, and when GLaDOS realizes that isn't going to work, she taunts our hero and tries to kill her. So Shell and GLaDOS come face to face, and it's here that GLaDOS reveals that she killed all the scientists that ran this facility by using neurotoxin, and now she's going to do the same thing to Shell. Fortunately, Shell is able to defeat GLaDOS by removing all of her AI cores and putting them in an incinerator. Next thing we see is Shell waking up in a daze in the car park of the Aperture Science facility, but she's being dragged back inside by the party escort bot. Now we're on a part of the series that a lot of people know about, but not many of them know the details of. It's actually a part of the series called Portal 2 Lab Rat, and it bridges Portal 1 to Portal 2.
It's super effective!
So our story begins with Ratman creating another den in the facility, and at the same time, Shell manages to defeat GLaDOS. Then we move to a flashback and we see that Ratman is actually developing GLaDOS, and he explains his concern with the AI because every other time that they tried powering it up, it tried to kill someone. Next thing we see is Ratman watching as the party escort bot drags Shell back into the facility, and then we have another flashback of the creation of the morality core. Then we go back to the present day, and Ratman reveals that he feels guilty for the situation that Shell is in, so even though he could escape, he wants to go and save her. I'm gonna skip forward a bit just for time constraints with this video, but essentially Ratman realizes that all the extended relaxation center's power have been put offline, but what he can do is divert all of the remaining power into Shell's one, but it would mean that she would be asleep, not aging until someone wakes her up. After this, Ratman falls asleep in a relaxation vault, and we don't know what happens to him after this. The one very, very important revelation that we discover from this series is the reason why Ratman chose Shell. It said in her file not to use her as a test subject because she never gives up. Ever. Portal 2 begins 50 days after Portal 1, where Shell is woken up and told to do some exercises, and then she goes back to sleep. When she's asleep again, we really don't know how much time passes. I did quite a lot of research, and I can determine that it's somewhere between 9 days and 50,000 years. And by the state of the facility, I'm leaning more towards the 50,000 years thing. When Shell does wake up, she meets Wheatley, who is in charge of all the test subjects, and he moves her relaxation chamber through the facility until they go to the main facility, and Shell gets the portal gun once again, and Wheatley says that it's necessary for their escape. The two make it to GLaDOS's chamber, and in the center of the chamber is the dead, lifeless remains of GLaDOS, and all around her is this vegetation that's overgrown in the facility. Wheatley tries to find the switch that's supposed to activate the elevator, but instead he wakes up GLaDOS, and needless to say, GLaDOS is a little bit bitter towards Shell, because apparently GLaDOS had to relive her death again, and again, and again. so that's fun. GLaDOS then crushes Wheatley and drops Chell into the emergency intelligence incinerator, and then begins testing with Chell. This part of the game has some of the funniest quotes in my opinion, such as, "She has a medical degree in fashion from France." This game is hilarious. Chell continues through the testing, and then Wheatley pops out from behind a chamber wall, and he's like, "Just hang on, girl, I'm gonna find a way out for you, just hang in there, go along with the testing." And GLaDOS gets more and more bitter by the minute. At one point, she's even like, "I'm gonna reunite you with your family," and obviously, that was a lie. Next thing, the power cuts out, and Wheatley reveals himself yet again, under the idea that GLaDOS doesn't know about him. She does, and when the two of them realize this, the two of them make an escape through the inner facility. As the two of them travel through the inner facility, GLaDOS obviously tries to kill them time and time again, and she fails, but they also stop production of neurotoxin and halt all production of turrets. Wheatley and Chell make their way to GLaDOS's chamber for what they think is going to be a final showdown. And here it's revealed that because Wheatley is in the chamber and because GLaDOS is 80% corrupted, Wheatley and GLaDOS have to switch places. So Wheatley is now in control of the facility, and Chell goes in the elevator and Wheatley starts raising it for Chell to escape, but then he lowers it again and is all like, "Actually, I did all the work." And GLaDOS is all like, "Actually no, Chell did all the work." And Wheatley gets pissed off at GLaDOS and puts her in a potato. Next, Wheatley's all like, "I'm in control now, Chell, you have to do what I say." And GLaDOS reveals that Wheatley was actually created to counter GLaDOS's intelligence, and he was programmed to be a total moron. Wheatley then becomes so enraged, he takes the potato GLaDOS, puts it in the elevator with Chell, smashes it down, and the two of them fall to the depths of the facility.
Because I'm a potato. Oh good, my slow clap processor made it into this thing, so we have that. Since it doesn't look like we're going anywhere, well, we are going somewhere, alarmingly fast actually. But since we're not busy other than that, here's a couple of facts. He's not just a regular moron. He's the product of the greatest minds of a generation, working together with the express purpose of building the dumbest moron who ever lived. And you just put him in charge of the entire facility. Good, that's still working. Hey, just in case this pit isn't actually bottomless, do you think maybe you could unstrap one of those long fall boots of yours and shove me into it? Just remember to land on one foot.
So during the fall, Chell passes out. When she wakes up, she is in the depths of the Aperture facility, and when she does wake up, she sees Potatoes being taken away by a bird. Chell makes her way through a series of old tests, and the history of Aperture is revealed to her through a recording of Cave Johnson, and eventually she finds Potato GLaDOS in a bird's nest, and Potato GLaDOS is all like, "We have to stop Wheatley." Chell and GLaDOS make their way through the ruins, and eventually they encounter a painting of Cave and Carolyn. And GLaDOS says that Carolyn is really familiar, and then she begins parroting a conversation between Cave and Carolyn, and this stresses her out so much that she shuts off. It's obvious around this point that Cave has become very frail, his health has totally deteriorated, and it's also around this time that we hear mention of the AI research. And after this, there is no more recordings of Cave. After GLaDOS learns of her true history as Carolyn, her personality begins to change gradually, and she says that she's changed. GLaDOS sees a poster about robot paradoxes, and she says that she has a plan to stop Wheatley. So our two heroes make it back to the facility, and it's clear that Wheatley is way in over his head. He's modifying test chambers, while there are total meltdowns in the power cores. GLaDOS then attempts to shut down Wheatley by using a logical paradox, and it doesn't work. Wheatley is too dumb to understand it, and then Wheatley forces Chell and GLaDOS to take part in his tests. Eventually, the rush from testing Chell wears off, and he tells her that there is a surprise to die for waiting for her, and the surprise is sprung early when Chell steps on a booby-trapped aerial faith plate. Once again, our good guys escape death and they make it into the back chambers of Aperture Laboratories. Chell and GLaDOS find a room that's filled with corrupted cores, and GLaDOS hatches a plan, and the two of them go to Wheatley's lair to spring it into action. Chell attaches 3 corrupted cores onto Wheatley, and this results on his corruption being at 100%, which means that GLaDOS and Wheatley are gonna swap places yet again, but Chell has to press the stalemate resolution button. The button explodes thanks to booby trapping by Wheatley, but thankfully Chell survives this explosion and she shoots a portal at the moon, which pulls Wheatley into space. Chell wakes up and finds a very worried Peabody and Atlas looking over her, and GLaDOS thanks Chell for helping her find her good side in Carolyn. And then she deletes Carolyn. After this, GLaDOS reveals that she is sick and tired of Chell, and she doesn't want Chell dead anymore. She just wants her gone. So she allows Chell to step outside for the first time in a very, very long time, and she steps outside into a very scenic cornfield, followed by her friend, the weighted companion cube. As the game ends, we see Wheatley floating around in space, saying that he regrets what he did. There is a co-op storyline, and we won't really be getting into the details of that. The only things that you really need to take note of for the storyline is that GLaDOS actually uses Atlas and Peabody to gain access to more humans. And also, Atlas and Peabody help remove birds from the inside of the facility which were interfering with GLaDOS, and GLaDOS begins to nurture the birds. All in all, the Portal series are incredibly fun games, and they're one of the rare games where I will genuinely say, we don't need a Portal 3, we want one. Valve have really explored the mechanics of the 2 existing games and the world of the 2 existing games to its fullest potential. The only other thing they could do is if there was another Portal testing facility somewhere else with a different GLaDOS that was on a totally different level of corruption.
It's super effective!
Okay guys, that is it for today. If you think I missed anything about Portal, please let me know in the comments down below. And also don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more history. My name is Faust, this has been Exploring Video Games, and it is super effective.